it in there. I'll see what to do with it. Oops, there. This, need that. Okay. That's the camera was playing. You're gonna have to take it off of this one off of. Mhm. Hi, everyone. This is Donna Druchunas with Sequential Artist Workshop, Procreate and Tech Tips. So we are going to work on Procreate today, which we've pretty much worked exclusively in Procreate for the last year. And then I'm going to be introducing some other things in the coming weeks and months, but we'll still do Procreate. But I have two things I want to do today. One is we're going to work on some color tricks and hacks in Procreate. And the other one is just a real short thing I want to share with you about an animated comic with music. And I want to share this because Procreate's new app, Procreate Dreams, is coming out on the 22nd of November this month, 2023. And I have an idea of a project that I want to do something like this. And this is the first one I've seen like this. I know it's not the only thing that exists, but I'm going to, let's see if I can figure out how to share it. Files, apps. Okay, it's only showing me my desktop. So I'm going to share my desktop and then switch to what I want to show you, and we'll see if that works. Can you see my books?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the book, Wolf of Baghdad. I'll go to the cover. So this is the book, The Wolf of Baghdad, by Carol Isaacs, who also goes by the Surreal McCoy. And so it came out first as a book, and it's about her family history. She's British, but her family all lives in Britain, but they are Jews from Iraq. That's where her parents and grandparents and everybody lived. So this is the story of her family in Iraq and her learning about it and talking to her parents and other family members. So it's a memoir, and it has some quotes from her family, and then this is her getting dressed in the robe that her grandmother would have worn, and she goes and explores old Iraq where her family lived, and she sees all ghosts of the people that used to live there, her family and friends and so forth. So it's just a regular graphic novel. So I'm going to switch now, and I think it'll work. And I want to show you a couple of seconds or a minute or so of the version that she made. It's sold separately. So can you see and hear that?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to share a tiny bit of that so you could see
Interesting.
how it is. There's a few spots where it's a little more animated. There's one spot where there's a character that turns around and looks at all the other panels on the page, and there's some smoke that comes up out of cooking pots and things like that. So it's not a ton of animation. And then the music that goes with it is traditional music that her parents and grandparents would have listened to when they were living in Iraq. And they didn't do that in Britain. They listened to like regular British popular classical music, Bach, and of course he wasn't British, but stuff that was listened to in Britain at that time. But anyway, I wanted to show you that because that other software is coming out, and
So you're
think
saying she
about
was able to take her stills from her book and using the Dream application, do that.
she did not use the Dream application because it's not out yet.
Oh, so how did she do that?
Who knows? But she didn't reveal that. But it will be possible to do that in the Dream application. I've seen demos of it, and that will be something like that would be very easy, compared to other animation softwares. Yeah. So something to think about.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm going to switch cameras now, and we'll do some other things. And I got a new iPhone, and it works as a webcam now. So everything I hope will be clearer than it was with my previous camera that I was having to use. So I'm going to spotlight my iPad, and we're going to just do some fun color things in Procreate that you can use to get consistency in the color, test the contrast in your color, and just kind of hacks. It's not like how to color, to take a brush and color something in, but we're going to look at, if you have something that's already drawn and colored, what kind of things can you do to it? So here's some versions of me that I have in two colors, like my regular color and then my crone adventure color for something I'm working on. But I want to show you a few fun things that I like to do with color. The first one is, sometimes I want my colors to be more vibrant and maybe just have a little more variation to them. So this is something that I do a lot. So I'll go to the top of my layers list, and you can do this at any time. I usually do it when I'm almost finished with something. I go to the top of my layers list, and with the wrench actions, I add a photo. I'm going to add a photo, and I happen to have an album that's all, whoops. Well, I got my dog, so my mom's dog. Let's try my mom's dog. See what happens with that. You can use any photo for this. I usually use pictures of marbles. So what it is, I brought in this photo, and I'm going to go into Gaussian blur, and I'm going to blur the photo so it's just blotches. You don't want to go all the way till it turns like that. You want to see like shapes in the color, but you don't want to be able to see the picture itself. And then I go into the layer blend modes, where you get from pressing the N, and I switch it to overlay. And it changes and adds a kind of glow to it. Now, the picture of the dog is not what I would normally pick. So let's see if I can actually get to my album of marbles. As you can see, I have like way too many photos. Those are shared albums. My albums. I don't know where my marbles went.
Ah,
Yeah, I lost my marbles.
lost her marbles,
I
people.
lost my marbles. There they are. I found my marbles. Okay. So I collected these specifically for this purpose. And so this has kind of got a lot of blue and green in it. So I'm going to pick this one that's got this area of blue in it. So I'm going to bring that in. And then, because we're going to blur it, it doesn't really matter what we do with it. You can turn it around, you can make it bigger. It doesn't matter. Like a lot of times you don't want to make something really big because it gets blurry. But in this case, we're going to make it blurry on purpose anyway. So I put that layer in, and I go into the adjustments with the magic wand, Gaussian blur, and pull it up again. I don't want to see the marbles, but I don't want it to get muddy. So I would usually go somewhere in there so I can see the colors, but they're really soft. And then I do the same thing, click on the end to get the layer blend modes, and go to overlay. Can you see how it
Mm.
adds like extra depth to the color and kind of makes it glow? And look at the difference where this side had the orange marbles and this side had the blue marbles. I find that really fun to do at the end of a comic or end of a drawing if I feel like my colors are a little bland and I want to punch them up. So this one's obviously colorful. The dog one is very muted. So because it was all brown and tan colors, it kind of mutes out the color. Whoops, turned everything off. So that's just a fun thing you can try for punching up your colors a little.
I will
So-
just insert to say that in the comic I'm just finishing now, I stole this trick, and with it, instead of using marbles, I just used a jelly print that I had made that had a lot of vibrant color sections in it, very abstract, but it worked perfectly. And what I did with it for this comic was I put it as the top layer on every page of the comic. And sometimes I would rotate it or make it a little bigger, a little smaller, but it gave kind of a pattern, like a really calm, very background pattern consistency to every page.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
I really like the impact it had.
Yeah. So I'm going to show you like this could be like 9 different comics pages. It was just a file I had with 9 different drawings. So you can do the same thing here. If you had, like Beth said, she had 9 different Procreate files and she would bring in the same image to each one, but it will change all of them. So if we insert a photo again, and I'm not going to look for the marbles again. I'm just going to scroll through here till I see something that has interesting colors. Here's some fall leaves. So bring that in, make it a little bigger so make sure it's covering the whole thing. And then go into adjustments, Gaussian blur, and blur it how much I want. I'll be like that. And then I can go into the layer blend modes and change it to overlay. And you can see how it changes all of them, but now they all look a little bit more similar because they have a little bit of an orange glow in this case because it was orange tree leaves. So yeah, if you do that on multiple files and multiple pages of a comic, it can add a consistency to it. So let me show you. Go ahead.
Where's the adjustments again under the red?
In the magic wand
Magic
on the
wand.
upper left. Magic wand is adjustments, and then Gaussian blur is 4th or 5th one down.
Right. Thank you.
Sure. So you don't have to do this with the photo. Now I did that with the photo. I do that a lot with the photo, but you can do other things as well. So I've got a layer in here that I'll turn on, put it to normal. So here's a layer that I made. So I just made a new layer and I took black and dropped it in to fill the whole layer. So I did this in one of my comics on purpose because I drew the whole thing in color. And then I wanted to make some pages of it black and white. So I made a layer like this on the top, all black, and I went into the little N for the layer blend modes, but instead of overlay, I went all the way down to hue. And it changes the whole page to black and white. This is also good to use to see how your contrast is. So, I have all these different things here. Like here we have really good contrast. The background really stands out from the character. This one is kind of hard to see when you change it to black and white because there's not very much contrast from the background to the character. And so you can do this as a test in anything you're drawing if you want to check the contrast of it. And then I might turn it then off, go into this character and take, like, say here, the background was not showing up enough. I could pick a really dark green from my palette and put it into have to be on the correct layer, put it into the background areas. I could either paint it with I could paint it or drop it in. And now when I turn my gray layer back on, you can see I've added much more contrast between the character and the background. So this is called a value check, where you change things to black and white to check the values. And this, because it's an extra layer that's set with the blend mode to hue, you can turn it on and off. So you're not actually changing your drawings to black and white. You're just using it as a temporary check. But if you wanted to make some or all of this black and white, you could do that too. So I can make a layer, a new layer, and use my selection tool, and I'll use a rectangle here. And I could just say, I just want this one in the middle to be black and white. So I selected that on the new layer. I could find my black color and drop it in. And I could change it to hue in the layer blend modes. And then it only changed that part to black and white. And that's what I did in one of my comics. I wanted certain panels to be black and white, but I had drawn the whole thing in color. So you can use a picture, a photo, and set it to overlay to make your colors pop. You can use a black layer and set it to hue to check your values. Excuse me, I touched something on it. To check your values or to change something to black and white. And then you can use a solid color and overlay as well. So here's back to my original one, and I have an orange layer in here. It's all solid orange, and I set it to overlay, and it makes everything get that orange hue. Now, it's very similar to my leaf one because that was very orange as well. And the other thing you can do with both of these is change the opacity. So you don't have to have the overlay layer all the way up to 100% opacity. You can lower it, and when you go down to 0, you see your original, and as you increase the opacity, it adds some bit of color tonality to it, but not completely. Like when I go all the way up, it's almost all orange. All the way down, the orange is gone. And in the middle, I can add it in different levels. So that's another thing you can do to change some colors. So let's take a look at it in another file. So we'll go back to my comic here. So we tried the marbles, or pictures of leaves, or pictures of whatever, like Beth said, she did a jelly print. You could scribble colors on a piece of paper with crayons and take a picture of it and bring it in and blur it. And so you have colors all over. So when you do it at the top, it changes the whole thing. So I can go in there and, say, okay, I really want this to be all red. So I can pick red and drop it in, and then make that layer hue. Or actually, you can just play with it and go through the layer blend modes and see what happens, because sometimes you get a happy accident and you just love it. So there it is with the red overlay, but there's all other kinds of things in there. And again, as you go to each one, you'll see something different. You can change the opacity of the layer if you just want to have a little bit of effect on it. So this is just an interesting way. I love this hard mix for getting like some kind of funky special effects in some pages of my comics. And then because it's just a solid color layer, anytime you want, you can say, well, what if that was purple instead of red? And you just drop purple into the layer. And then you can undo and redo. So playing with these whole layers, it's really fun. And like you said, like I've seen people, I think Sarah Glidden did this in her Rolling Blackouts book, but I'm not sure. She did a watercolor, and she painted a yellow wash in all of her panels to give it a consistency of color. So if you're working digitally, you can do this kind of thing. And if you put it, like Beth said, on every page of your comic, it will bring a consistency to the colors, even if you didn't use the same colors to paint the pages. Okay, but what if you don't want it on the whole picture? So I have my layer way at the top of my layers list. And so it's on top of my lines, it's on top of my everything, background and everything. I could drag it down. Whoops, just want to drag one layer. I could drag it down here so it's only on my colors. And so if I change it, so this one's not a good one to demonstrate on the hard mix because it doesn't change light colors as much as dark colors. But if I change it to something else and it's down here, what if I say clipping mask? Now it's not on the background at all. It's just on whatever is on this layer. So you can use a clipping mask and it will only show on whatever that object is. And in this case, it's all of me's and the floor, but the background on that layer is blank, so it didn't turn the background that color. So I don't have a lot of layers here. So like I colored all of mine on one layer and I drew the lines on one layer. Another thing you can do with a color layer and a clipping mask is color your lines. So I'm going to turn the clipping mask off and I'm going to take this layer and I'm going to set it to normal. And I'm going to bring it up on top of my inking. Turn it off so you can see. So I'll turn all my layers off except my inking. So I do that by pressing and holding on the check mark on the inking layer, and you press and hold, the other layers come back. Press and hold, everything else disappears. So here's just my ink. Now I turn on the red, and if I wanted to turn my ink red, I would just go up to this red layer and say clipping mask. Now I could turn that on and off and see what my lines look like, red or black. So that's one way you can color your lines. Of course, because it's a clipping mask, it colors all the lines that are on the layer below it. So because I have all 4 of my characters and the word me inked on this one layer, it's turning them all red. But it doesn't have to be a full layer. If you fill the whole layer with red, yes. But what if I want this me to be red and this me to have blue lines? Well, I'm going to work on this color layer, but it's a clipping mask, so it's only coloring the lines. I can pick a blue color and I can pick a nice solid brush. If I go in here, remember, I'm not coloring on the ink layer. I'm coloring on this solid color layer, but it doesn't have to stay all red. See, I can color on that layer and change the lines, which means that I could do this, just for part of it too. Maybe I only want the outline of my glasses to be blue. So I can go in and change that. Or maybe the shirt. So you can do all kinds of things on this layer. And when you put it in a clipping mask, because it's clipping mask above the inks, wherever you color only shows up where you have ink. Does that make sense? A clipping mask clips off part of the layer, or you could also think of it being like masking tape. So if I turn this clipping mask, take this clipping mask off. So when you have a clipping mask, it puts a little arrow here. And when you click on that, you'll see clipping mask is checked here. So I can uncheck that. And now you can see what that layer really looks like, right? It's got red and some blue splotches. And let's take some green now, and I'll make my brush really big, and I'm just going to put a green splotch over there. So I drew all this stuff. Now this layer below it, if I turn off the color layer and just turn my inking layer on, well, this layer is all blank except for the black lines. So what does a clipping mask do? Is it makes the layer that you're going to use with the clipping mask only color where you have pixels in the layer below it. So I'll just show you this in two ways. So you can, maybe this will help. So this layer is just the lines. There's no white in it. There's no, I didn't like paint it white. Sorry, my layers keep going away. I didn't paint it white or anything. So if I turn the background off, you can see it goes gray because there's no pixels in there. I just drew my black lines. So when I put this in a clipping mask, it goes into the lines. Someone's got a audio on? Sally, I think that's you.
Sorry.
Okay. No problem. So it colored the lines, okay? Now I'm gonna turn that clipping mask off again, and you can see I still actually have a whole layer. What if I wanted to, instead of coloring my lines, what if I wanted to color my characters? So here's my painting. It doesn't look very good without the lines, but when I turn the lines on, you can see I colored in myself, right? So what if I wanted to use this colored layer to change the colors of this? I can drag it way down here. So here's my color layer with my painting. Here's my crazy colored layer. And this could also be the marbles or the fall leaves or anything, as you know. And when I say clipping mask, those colors are only inside there. And again, I can change the saturation of it. Of course, this is an ugly example because I scribbled all over it. So let's take 3 fingers and go back and forth on that layer and erase it. So now my color layer is blank again. And let's see what happens if we just fill it with the solid color. So I'm going to fill it with purple. Okay, so now it kind of purplified all my painting. And again, it doesn't look very good without the lines because of the way I painted it. So when I add my lines, now I've got a purple version of Mies, but the lines are still black because I used the clipping mask on that. I know clipping masks and masks can be really hard to understand, but basically, whenever you have a layer that has something in it, you can use a clipping mask with it to color within the lines. So I'm going to show you just a simple version. This was kind of complicated. We were coloring in the lines of the drawing or in the painting. But what if I just make a new canvas? And I'm going to draw, whoa, I forgot how big my brush was. I'm going to draw a flower, right? And then, I don't know, I'll draw, I always use the flowers and leaves for this kind of thing because I can, everybody knows what it is, even though if I draw a crappy one, right? So there's a flower. Now say I want to play with making different colors on the flower. Right now I have the one layer. So make another layer above it. And what if this was red? I could drag red into it and I could say, make this a clipping mask. And then the red is only where I drew the flower. Now I can make it somewhat transparent. And so that just shows me, look, if I made it red and somewhat transparent, I get this effect. If I change the blend modes, oh, wow, look at that. This is the add mode. When I did that, it completely changed it to pink and yellow. So these are ways that I find that I discover color combinations that I never would have thought of. And I like this one. I love this one too. It's got this like muted camouflage green and this almost, it's darker on mine than it is there, but this, it's really nice, like complementary colors almost, or whatever it is. It looks, you get, yeah, there we go, blue and green, different blue and green. So I like to play with this. And a lot of times I will end up leaving it that way for my final art and then use the same thing in other pages as well. But I wanted to show you the clipping mask on something simple, because the other one had, was more complicated. Again, if I turn the clipping mask off, in this case, it looks the same. Why? Because there's nothing else in the whole drawing besides that. But you can see that this is full. So let me add another layer to show what happens with multiple layers. So I'm going to draw another flower here. And my colors are coming out funny looking because I have this red mask on. Turn it off. Now, the leaves match. You can't really see where those colors are. So I'm going to make the leaves on the second flower darker. Come on. I always draw on the wrong layers. I'm sorry. I know I do that in like every week. I do that in a video because I do it all the time. Okay, turn the red layer off. Now you can see I have one layer with the purple flower and another layer with the yellow flower. Now, if I put this red block just above the purple flower and I turn it on, it only colors that because it's behind it. So I guess this is a bad example for the clipping mask because I just don't have enough going on. So let's add something else. Let's add a background, some ground in here, and maybe some little pieces of grass growing out of it. Now, if I don't want this ground to be colored with the red, and I turn the red on to the clipping mask, it's only covering coloring the purple layer. I don't know if I'm helping or confusing you, but I wanted to, I'm sorry, clipping mask, sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. But I wanted to show you that by playing with the clipping mask, and also by just taking this color layer and moving it up and down in your layers palette, you can change the color of one or more things. So if it's way at the top, it will change everything. If you use it as a clipping mask, it only changes whatever it's right above. So now it's changing the yellow flower because it's right next to the yellow flower. But if oops, I think I hit invert. So yes, if you hit invert, it changes colors of things. I did that by accident. Anyway, you can move it around, and so you don't have to use these fun things that we did for the whole image. You can use them for only parts of an image if you
Hey,
want.
Donna.
Yeah.
This is Beth. I think we could probably do this pretty quickly. Could you, in addition to having just shown like how you drop in a whole color and then do these changes, what if that layer 2, was not solid? What if you paint it? I know you showed us with the marbles, and now you showed us the solid. What if somebody like painted a design or used a pattern brush or something and then did this? Can
that would be cool too. So let's turn this back to normal and full opacity. And I'm going to turn it on so it's only that layer. Now I'm going to take my 3 fingers and scrub back and forth to erase it. I'm going to get rid of the other layers. I only want to look at this one layer. Yeah, so I could take colors and I could take let me just go in here where I have some texture. Terralia, that's one that comes with Procreate. It's in the artistic folder. I made a copy of it in my own folder here. So let's say I'm going to color with some Terralia and make these watercolor splotches and just add some different colors that happen to be in the palette I have open. They have nothing to do with anything. Okay, so now I turn all my layers back on. Come on, turn my layers back on. Okay, so it looks kind of messy here because it's still on normal, and normal will have opaque, and it doesn't work for colorizing. But you can go to overlay and look what it did. Isn't that cool? You can try all these other ones. Some of them affect white in the background and some of them do not. So overlay doesn't do anything to the white, it only changes the colors. But other ones like hard light will affect anything that's white as well. Vivid light, so you can play with that. You can go above normal in the list too. The ones multiply, darken and stuff, the ones on top of normal in the list generally make things darker when you pick them. The ones below normal in the list generally make things lighter. Here we got lighter color. So yeah, and it didn't affect this flower because I chose lighter color for the blend mode, and the flower is lighter than the painting. So lighter color only makes things lighter. So the purple was darker, so it makes it lighter. So that's why it's like, don't really worry about memorizing what they mean, but that's why you should scroll through them because they all do different things and it can be surprising. And then again here, if I wanted to move this down, I could move it down so it's only affecting the stuff, certain layers. Yeah, a lot of times I make something like this and I put it all the way in the background and I kind of use it just to but that's a different way, right? I put it in the background so that my background's not so plain. And then, the other way is where I put it on the top. Oh, of course, now here, I did not blur this. I can also make a painting like we did at the very beginning and go into the Gaussian blur and blur it and then use that for my overlay.
And you can use it as a clipping mask, so it only impacts one of the flowers, if that's what you
So
wanted.
exactly. So if I used it as a clip, if I changed it to clipping mask, now it's only affecting the top flower. And I can actually move the layer around with the transform tool. And it changes, see, because I had different things painted on it, it changes how that flower looks, depending which part of my layer is overlapping it. Ooh, I like it like that. Yeah. So, and you can make another one for, like I can make a new layer above my purple flower and say, let's see, I want something like I want to kind of have a pink center, and then I just want to have a little bit of maybe something going on there with some blue. But I don't want it to look like that because I want it to be smooth, gradient kind of. So I'll do the Gaussian blur and then change it to overlay. And then if I wanted to, depending what else was in my picture and if it was getting somewhere else, coloring outside the lines, I could change it to a clipping mask. In this case, I only colored inside the flower anyway, so I didn't really need to do that. Okay.
If you
Go
put a clipping mask on a thing and you decide, yes, I love that, permanently want to make that change, can you pinch and combine them? Does that work?
Yep. So
Okay.
look up here, I have, can you see how it's turning orangey when I turn the color on that yellow flower? Let's make something stronger so it shows up more. Okay, so now I have that in the colored layer and it's in a clipping mask to the yellow flower. And I'm done. I'm done. I just want to keep it. So yes, I can pinch those together and now it's one layer and it's going to stay like that forever.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so I might have got carried away with clipping masks.
Only because they're so much fun.
Yeah, they're fun and experiment with them if you don't know what they're going to do. And then these overlay layers I did, but I want to show you something else now. So I'm going to go down to this. This is my regular drawing I made. And I'm going to show you how you can use gradient maps to recolor comics.
I'm
And you
so glad you're going to show this because that is an utter and total mystery to me. I cannot figure them out.
This
So
is
yay,
super fun.
yay
Now,
for me.
okay, so to use gradient maps to recolor a picture, I don't want to do it just to one layer. It only works on one layer at a time, but I want to recolor this whole comic, all the layers. So what I have to do is make a copy of it. And I do that by going into the wrench, add, and copy canvas. After you copy the canvas, the paste feature should turn dark so you can paste it. Now, looks like nothing happened, right? But what I did was, in my layers, now I have this one layer that has my whole comic on it. And then down here, I still have my separate layers. So I can turn those off and just turn on the single layer. It's like a flattened version of it, but they're all in the same file still. I like to keep the old stuff in there in case I want to go back and change it. But because gradient map only works on a single layer, you have to do copy canvas and paste and do that at the very top. And then your top layer is a copy of your whole page. Okay, gradient maps are so cool. So they're under the magic wand adjustments. And they're the fourth one down, I think. So gradient map. Now I've got all different ones in here. Procreate comes with some. And if you just go through and click on the ones that Procreate comes with, you can see it does different kinds of colorization to your picture. Okay, so what's going on here? If you have one picked, it gets a little bigger. Can you see how this blaze one is a little bigger than the other ones? If I click on neon, the neon box gets a little bigger and goes to the center. So once I click on it, I can click on it again, and it opens up this little palette that shows you what's happening. So on the left is your darkest colors, and on the right is your lightest colors. And you can move these colors and add more squares to it or whatever. So I can move where the color changes from orange to purple to black. I can move that up and down. I accidentally added another one. Okay, so if I move that up, then some more areas turn purple. They were lighter in my picture. I can move the orange up and down. I can say, I don't really want any pure white in this. I want the lightest colors to be yellow. And you get, when you click on one of the little squares, you get the color picker, same as the one up there. And so I'll go into this one and say, I don't want any white. I want it to be yellow. And so now there's no pure white in this. And you can do undo and redo inside of this. So I can go back and see what does it look like with white? What if I change that to yellow? You can play around with that. So you can move these colors around. Okay, so I want to like undo all this because I don't want to mess up this one that came with Procreate. That was the Blaze one. Other thing that you can mess around with them. Also, if you don't want to mess them up, just like anything else, you can press and hold on it and you can duplicate it. So you can make a copy of it and then go in and mess around with it. The other thing you can do is just make a new one. So I'm going to click here and make a new one. So when you make a new one, it just starts with black for dark and white for light. And you can add whatever you want in here and change them. So I don't want black. I want a dark purple for my darkest color. Okay, so my darkest color is dark purple. For my lightest color, I want yellow. And you might make some that looks ugly, but you might make some that looks beautiful. So then, then at this middle dark, I want, and you can move around and try different things to make your own gradient map up. So long as you go from dark to lighter, it will make something that doesn't look super crazy. So you want to go dark, medium, lighter, medium, lighter, lightest. So this blue might be too light. Move them around. So this is not a particularly great one. Maybe I don't like the yellow. I don't like the yellow. Let's make it a really, really almost white gray blue. Let's move it down lower. Okay, that's interesting. And then that gets saved in your gradient maps. So I've made a few that I like that just happen to be pleasing to me. I have this one that is a little crazy, but I like it. And I like this one. So these are just ones I made that I like. This one doesn't work particularly well for this image. Maybe there's not enough light colors in it.
So Donna, I have a question.
Yeah.
Can you use a clipping mask or some kind of mask? Say you just wanted to make a gradient of like one of the person's pants
Oh, yeah.
or the
So
background. Yeah.
well, yeah. So here I did the whole image, right? I did it on the whole image. That's why I did copy canvas. And again, I can change the blend mode on this and keep my other drawing in it. Oh, look at that. That's kind of cool, isn't it? I put it on overlay. Okay, but again, this is over the whole image. So yeah, you can use a clipping mask, but also you can just put something in a separate layer. Like I said, this one's not so great because these are all on one layer. So let's take a selection tool and I'm going to select this person and I'm going to swipe with 3 fingers down and cut and paste them. So now this person colors is on a different layer than these people. So yes, so I have this one layer. I can do a gradient map just on that one layer because I have to have the right layer selected and turned on, and then I can go into adjustments, gradient map. Yeah, and so I can just apply the gradient map to that one person. Or if I make a selection, and I just want, let's do freehand selection. I just want to put a gradient, selection. Just want to put a gradient map on her head. I can select it and go into gradient map. And then I can just change the colors of her head or her pants or whatever. So there's lots of things
Very
you can
cool.
do with these
Yeah.
things. Yeah. There's lots
Super
of things you
cool.
can do with them by recoloring a whole thing, recoloring one whole layer, recoloring just a selection. So yeah, all of that you can use it with. So gradient maps can be kind of crazy depending how you set them up. But generally, the thing to remember is have dark on the bottom and light on the top. This is an interesting one I did. Someone did a thing on showing that blue is generally darker than green, is darker than red, is darker than orange, is darker than yellow. So I just made a gradient map like that. So when I do that, you can see this drawing doesn't have anything really dark in it because nothing's showing up and down in that end of the rainbow. So I'm just saying, I was just showing you that to show you that you can put any colors you want in a gradient map. So long as you start at dark and go to light, it will look interesting and not like completely bizarre. If you move the light and darks around, you get like psychedelic effects.
Tutti frutti. I have
Yeah.
another question. So can you
Okay.
only have the gradient map going from top to bottom? Can you make like a starburst gradient map or like have it go vertically left or right?
It's not that kind of gradient. It's
Okay.
you're not painting with a gradient, you're mapping. Okay, so that's a good question though, because let's put this back together. So literally what you're talking, there's a gradient, which Procreate doesn't have. You can do gradients in Procreate, but it's not a built-in feature. What the gradient map does is it takes everything in this layer that I have selected, and I'm going to make one of their pants really dark. So I'm going to make her pants like really dark. In fact, I'm going to use a brush and color them in so they're really, really dark. So the gradient map, and then I'm going to take white and make one of their shirts like really white. So now this has a whole range from really light to really dark. The gradient, it's called a gradient map because it's going to map light to dark to different colors. So when I go into adjustments, gradient map, and pick this one, the really dark stuff that I colored black turns to the dark purple. The white, I have white here. The medium colors are pink and gold and green. So it's mapping what's already there to new colors, but that's not making like a rainbow gradient or a blur, a blend. It's not making a blend.
So you can't paint on like a blue, you can't paint like a sunset behind them on a blank screen. You have to have a color there.
Not with a gradient map, but we can do that. So let's make a new layer and put it in the back. Okay. And so they're all crazy colors because I put a gradient map on them, but that doesn't matter. What we want to do is on this new layer, we want to make a sunset. So what you have to do for that, we'll just turn everything else off. So we just have this new layer. There's nothing on it yet. So I'm going to say sunset. I don't know. Is that like orange at the bottom?
Sure.
You know, I'm just making this up. So I'm just going to take the brush I have. I'm going to paint orange. I'm going to paint some pink. That's probably not right, but doesn't matter. We might have some yellow down here, and then it's turning kind of purplish. And then, yeah, at the top, it's going to be like navy blue or something because it's fading to night. So I just colored that. And, you know, I did it kind of sloppy. You can do it really neat with, you know, solid blocks. Then what you want to do is to blend these.
With the
blur
Gaussian.
Yeah, so I would use motion blur. So what Gaussian blur does is it blends everything. And that actually works okay, right? That worked okay. Yeah. Motion blur blurs in the direction you move your pen. So if I go that way, it blurs that way.
Sweet.
But if I do motion blur this way, it blurs it that way. Up and down. And you can do it diagonally.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Those are and there's a perspective blur too that I never use. So now we'll turn all the other layers back on, and look, we've got the sunset behind them. So that's not a gradient map, but we manually created a gradient by painting the colors in and using blur.
Beautiful.
And you could use Gaussian blur, motion blur, or you could play with perspective blur as well. So other software, you're welcome, like Affinity Publisher and Photoshop, they have gradients built in. So you can it kind of looks more like with the gradient mapping, and you just pick the colors and it draws this. But in Procreate, you have to use blur to make a blend like that. Yeah. I don't know if there was anything else I was going to show you. But that's just a bunch of little color hacks and things you can play with for changing it. And usually it comes out a little better than this, but we combine like all different crazy things in here, trying them all in one drawing. Yeah. Any other questions? Let's see. How can you gradient a small area like a shirt? Lynn says. Okay.
That was my question. That was just, you answered it. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You did do it with the head. Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, well, you can also do what we just did inside this shirt. So like, so here's a shirt, and I can take my selection tool and I can use automatic. Oh, it got her arms too. So I'm going to use selection tool with freehand. And come on, freehand. And I'll draw around her shirt, right?
Yep.
And now when I paint, it's just going to paint inside that selection. So I can do the same thing. I can paint. Oh, come on. I want to paint. I can paint inside there some green, and I can paint the other part of it pink on the top. Is it? Or pink's not working really well. I don't know. Yeah. So now I painted some purple in there and some green, and it's in the selection. So you see how it's got the diagonal lines where it's not selected? Can you see that? I'm not sure if it's
yeah.
Yeah. So now if I go motion blur, It's only blurring in the selection too. So I can make a,
Nice.
I can do that on her shirt too. And yeah, so anything,
great.
yeah, so a lot of things you can do on the whole page, on one layer, or in a selection.
Yay.
So yeah, so that's just some color hacks that you might want to play with. Those are just things that I like to use. And then every once in a while, I find one that I really like and I use it in, a bunch of stuff in my comics. But there's so many things in there that the best thing to do is just take a file like this, make a copy of it, and then just do all kinds of crazy things in it and see what you get. And then remember what you did.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
Yeah.
Oops.
But the main thing is, I think, well, you can come up with color combinations that you never would have thought of. That's one. And the second one is you can make a whole comic that's in like a whole bunch of different Procreate files, have a consistent feel by putting the same top layer in all of them, whether it's a solid color or blurred marbles or something you scribbled, and setting it to overlay or one of those other layer blend modes. And now we'll add a consistent, almost like a consistent watercolor wash over all of your pages. So that it looks like you painted it with the same paints, because like if you paint, I don't know if you do watercolor, but if you paint with watercolor and you're using Naples yellow on one and cadmium yellow on another, they're not going to look the same, right? But if you did all these crazy things and then you took quinacridone gold, because that's kind of transparent, and did a light wash of it over all of your things, it would give them some unity.
So I made a comic once. It was a little 8-page zine about Santa Claus. And I had a white background I didn't like. I didn't know what to do. So I found a vintage Christmas card, picture of Santa from like the 20s, blurred it out with Gaussian blur and put it on top of every single one of the pages, which made me laugh because I used Santa to do a zine about Santa, but it also gave me that consistent, and it took away the glaring whites, which I didn't want. It just gave me a little bit of color in the background.
Colors. Christmas Santa colors, right? Yeah.
Plus I amused myself. So there.
Right. Yeah. So play with those things. I think that you'll, find a couple things that you end up liking that you'll use over and over again. But the only way is to experiment and see which ones work best for you. So, well, that's it today. Thanks for coming. Remember, every other week for Procreate.
Fantastic.
So next week is the field guide to graphic literature on Wednesday. So if you want to come to that, you're more than welcome. So I'm alternating weeks, 1 week field guide, 1 week Procreate or digital art. We're going to look at a few different things you can use with Procreate as well coming up. So
Donna, this was great. I'm sorry I missed the first half hour. I was shopping for food, which I couldn't wait till the end. The store would have been empty. But when will this be posted on YouTube so I could catch the first half?
Probably tomorrow or today. Yeah.
Yay.
Quick. Yeah.
Carlos will do it. All right. Sweet. Thank you so much. This is huge. Great.
Bye, everyone.